Hello, everybody, and good evening. On behalf of Campa Dugong team, Wildlife Institute of India, I, Oishini Chakraborty, welcome you to this webinar on the role of technology in marine mammal science. In 2008, India signed an MOU with the Convention of Migratory Species and to protect dugongs and their habitats. During COVID in 2020, the Camper Dugong team conducted an online event to celebrate this Dugong Day. This event was eventually picked up by the global community to be celebrated as the World Dugong Day. This year, as part of World Dugong Day, we are delighted to host national and international experts to share their expertise on the use of technology in their research. Now, technology plays a crucial role in marine mammal science, enabling the use of technology to study these creatures more effectively and most importantly, non-invasively. So now, I would like to request our director, Sri Virendra Tiwari, IFS, Wildlife Institute of India, to give an introductory talk on the session.
Yeah, good evening to all. Let me first wish you all on the occasion of World Dugong Day. India is one among the country holding good population of dugong, and it is found in three regions of India. That is the Andaman and Nicobar Island, Tamil Nadu, in Tamil Nadu, Gulf of Mannar, Pak Bay, and in Gujarat, in Gulf of Kutch. As we all know, dugongs are primarily herbivorous marine mammals, rely only on underwater seagrass habitats for foraging, and require large areas in near-shore waters for breeding. However, dugong population and their habitats along the Indian coast are prone to human-mediated threats such as fishnet entanglement, overfishing in the seagrass habitats, habitat loss, and habitat degradation due to pollution. As a result, dugong populations in the world are threatened, and currently dugongs are classified as vulnerable to extinction in IUCN Red List and are listed in Appendix 1 of CITES and Appendix 2 of Convention on Migratory Species. Thus, in order to create awareness among the community, every year the World Dugong Day has been celebrated to mark the day, that is May 28th from 2008, when India signed a memorandum of understanding with CMS to protect dugong and their habitats in India. Presently, Wildlife Institute of India is leading the dugong recovery program in the country with funding support from the National Campa Authority under the aegis of Endangered Species Recovery Program. This project has been instrumental in reaching many milestones in the dugong conservation in India, specifically raising awareness about dugongs, seagrasses, and their importance in the coastal communities. Thus, on this Dugong Day celebration, I take this opportunity once again to wish the Dugong team for conducting this event successfully. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So now I would like to request Dr. J.A. Johnson, scientist at Wildlife Institute of India and principal project investigator of Campa Dugong project, to give a talk on the overview of the Dugong project and its achievements.
Thank you, Dr. Oshni. So before begin my talk, really now I would like to welcome all our guests, especially the invited speaker, Dr. Anand Pandey, Sri Sagar. Then there are two more guests are going to join, Dr. Eric as well as Miss Isha. And we also have another important expert, Dr. Shivakumar. He will be moderating this program. I am really fortunate to have such a great expert in this Dugong Day celebration, and I'm really looking forward to hear the what are the latest technology or tools available to conserve the marine mammal research. And moving to the our program, everybody know about the Kamba Dugong program. During Dugong conservation in our country has seen many milestones, especially in the last decades, especially after the implementation of the Dugong recovery program with the support of the National Kampa Authority funding. And this program, many of them are aware actually still to understand to reach out the other audience. This program was launched way back in 2016. Then now we are marching towards the 9 year, and hopefully we will be successfully completing 10 year. And whatever the achievements we have reached through this Kampa Dugong program, I'll like to highlight here. I'm not going to make any presentation, just I would like to share our achievements and way forward, what we are planning to do in the coming hours. So this program had four clear objectives. One is species-oriented research, to understand the status of the dugong population, applying the latest technology like aerial survey, drones, even the acoustic equipment to understand the species ecology as well as the number. Second one is habitat oriented research, understanding the species, the habitat status, especially dugong is a one species. It's an obligatory seagrass dependent species. What is the status of seagrass meadows available in the Dugong Range states, and what type of species, community organization associated with that species, and including the threat status, because most of the Dugong habitats are outside the PA, which has been used by the human community, and there are many threats, challenges are right now Dugong habitats are facing, including the intensive fishing, trawler operation, destructive fishing, and sometimes no, even some places we are getting pollution load into the seagrass habitat. So we have assessed the threat map through this objective. And third important component of the capacity building program. So last 9 years we have conducted many capacity building program for the different stakeholders, especially the frontline forest officers as well as the other stakeholders. And the fourth important component, the community awareness program, community outreach activities. And these are the four important components we have. With this component, this objective, we have launched this program. And in terms of species research, over past 7-8 years, we have used several methodology, including boat survey, questionnaire survey, fisher folk information, and including the drone survey. So that quite successfully we have demonstrated recently, and we could be able to come up with the encounter rate. So that is a good thing. But there are some limitations still we are facing, because we do not have a high-end drone to use the vast extent of the seagrass habitat, seagrass as well as the marine habitat, and other challenges like the movement, seasonal migration, movement of the animals also there, and depending upon the tide, depending upon the weather pattern, again the abundance and distribution pattern also will change. So we need to do repeat several times, and we need to standardize the specific protocol to come up with the estimation. And in future we are planning to put even acoustic also to record the dugong sounds. But again there are challenges. Dugongs are the one, they are not giving a single signal. There are multiple signal, multiple sounds it is producing. So we need to do a lot of research on that, and maybe we can hear more about the expert speaker who are going to speak, and we can take it forward. And in the case of habitat research, the entire seagrass meadow as well as the dugong habitats we have nicely mapped, especially the based on the field observation of the seagrass distribution across the coastline, especially Park Bay, Gulf of Mannar, Andaman Nicobar group of island, and Gulf of Kutch regions. So we now we can able to pinpoint where is the vast extent of good seagrass meadows are available, what is the critical dugong habitats are available, and based on that information, even we have given provided input to the state forest department to specify these are the areas which has a good congregation of the dugong population, which needs to be taken care for the conservation. And some of the states like Tamil Nadu, they are very proactively accepted our recommendation, and they have declared a chunk of seagrass habitat and brought under the protected area category. So now we have a Dugong conservation reserve in the Park Bay region. Similarly, we are also planning for one such protected area to conserve the habitat which is located outside the protected area. One we are planning in the Andaman Nicobar group. So soon we'll have a dialogue with the forest department. We'll be in a position to recommend and declare some portion as protected area in the Andaman group of island. And apart from the habitat and species, and we have also studied the genetic status of the dugong population, which is there in the Indian territory. And we found that we have a unique haplotype population in the Indian region, which has more similarity towards the Middle East and African coast population rather than the Southeast Asian region actually. Even though we have a high level of genetic diversity which is there within the Indian population, that needs to be because it is one of the evolutionary significant unit that need to be preserved. More than 80% of the genetic diversity we found within the Indian population. And then coming to the capacity building program, there are many series of capacity building program we have organized, especially for the frontline ranges. We have provided scuba diving program, then underwater monitoring program, snorkeling program, and other stakeholder also we have provided a lot of input related to coastal and marine biodiversity, and how to mainstream the protection sector towards the conservation of the marine coastal and marine biodiversity. So these periodically we have been conducted so many capacity building program for the frontline forest officer as well as the other stakeholders. That is another great achievement. Then the last one is that is very important one, the outreach activities, because the dugong is the one, it's very elusive animal, it is there in the water, and fishermen they know, but the coastal community which are living in that area, they are not much aware about the dugong. So through continuous engagement program like conducting street drama, engaging the community youth, and we have created a very nice volunteer network of dugong ambassador in all the dugong range states, which comprise of youth, scuba divers, tourism operators, even the children, school going children. They're all part of the dugong network, and including the forest managers and other stakeholders like the fishery department, navy, coast guard. They're all part of this network, and continuously they have been engaged in the awareness, creating awareness program among the community. So now the message has spread all across the dugong range state. Everybody know about the dugong, their importance, and how the habitat is providing the livelihood for the communities. Now they are very much aware about the importance of the seagrass habitat and the dugong actually. And then there is a one more important outreach activities we have initiated through this program, that is Dugong Scholarship Program. Under this program, we have reached out the fishermen community students. We have selected fishermen, school-going students at this level of 10th level students, and continuously we have been providing scholarship for them till they reach the +2 actually. So far, more than 1,000 students were get benefited under this scheme. This is an excellent program, and not only providing only scholarship, and every month we call them, we entertain them, and we take the people to the beach and make them understand about the biodiversity and the value of the seagrass habitat around that area. And through that, that message has reached even each and every the family, the fishermen families, those who are depending on the seagrass habitat. So that is an excellent program, and still we are continuing that program. Now the entire Dugong Range state, message has been spread, and people are very much aware, and they are very cooperative to the frontline staff as well as the other stakeholder to conserve the Dugong conservation in that area. So these are the some of the few achievements I have highlighted here, and moving towards the the looking forward, the way forward. So one important gap still exists to come up with the real estimate of the population in the Dugong Range states. That's what we are right now. We are looking for the advanced techniques drone, acoustic, or any other invasive sampling techniques. If it is available, we are ready to take that challenge and test that one. So then second thing is we have this program till December 2025, about 1.5 years we have. So our idea, as well as the government of India's idea, is to slowly handhold the forest department and translate whatever the best practice we have implemented, adopted, that needs to be transferred to the field level officer, so that in future slowly they will continue whatever the good work the Dugong team they have done in that particular landscape. So now the hand holding part is happening, and soon the frontline the officers, they will take it forward. Already the Tamil Nadu Forest Department, especially the Dugong Conservation Reserve, and they have initiated. Similarly, Gulf of Mannar also, they have started continuing the outreach activity and capacity building program, as well as the event research. So we have identified some of the pockets where we need to interfere, go for the restoration of habitat. Now they have started, and they have started monitoring the seagrass meadows in that area. So this is what we are planning in the upcoming the period till December 2025. So with this, I conclude my talk here, and I'm ready to take any question, either after my talk or even the end of the session. Over to Dr. Oshini.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Uh, we don't have questions as of now. So if you have any questions for Johnson, sir, you can put it in the comment box and we will get back to you at the end of the session. So moving on, we will start today's talk session. Before we start the talk session, I'd like to just introduce the speakers. So today we have with us Dr. Eric Angel Ramos, scientist at FINS, Belize, Dr. Anand Pandey, Program Head Marine Megafauna, Wildlife Conservation Society, Mr. Sagar Rajpakar, PhD student and Principal Project Associate, Campa Dugong Project, Wildlife Institute of India, and Ms. Isha Bopardekar, PhD student, ISER Tirupati, and a collaborator with K. Lisa Yang, Center for Conservation Bioacoustic, Cornell University. Since we have Dr. Ramos joining us from a different time zone, he will be with us after 6 p.m. So now I would like to begin our series of talks by inviting our first expert speaker of the event, Dr. Anand Pandey. So,
Hi.
as mentioned before, just let me introduce you first. So, as mentioned before, he's currently leading the Marine Megafauna program with the Wildlife Conservation Society of India. He is a notable figure in wildlife conservation with over 16 years of experience. He has participated in key national research programs such as Indian scientific expeditions to Antarctica, All India Tiger Census, Cheetah Reintroduction Project, and the National Dugong Recovery Project. He has been instrumental in writing several national reports pertaining to marine policies in India. Also, he's known to emphasize the application of technology in his research. We're really grateful to have you, sir. Over to you for the talk.
Thank you, Dr. Vishnu, for such a wonderful introduction. And it's like homecoming for me to come and give this talk for Wildlife Institute of India Campa Dugong Recovery Program. I remember that in 2020, during when the COVID first wave was going on, we started this program of celebrating 28th May as the World Dugong Day. And as you said, that it was also picked up by the international community. And now I think it's a global kind of program that happens with many organizations and many individual research labs, many project groups. It happens throughout the globe. And I'm happy to present my work, what's happening with respect to latest tools in technology, what is happening with marine mammal research. And although I thought that this talk I would be able to kind of explain it well on each and every type of technology that's available for marine mammal research and conservation, but I'm happy that Dr. Eric Ramos, Sagar, and Isha would be talking after me, so I'm kind of have less burden of explaining a lot of things. I'll start with my presentation. Just a minute. Can you see my screen? Is my screen visible, Dr. Vishnu?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, great. Thank you. Uh, so first of all, I would like to thank Camper Dugong Recovery Program and WII for calling me for this particular talk. My talk is titled as Emerging Technology for Marine Mammal Research and Conservation. I work with Wildlife Conservation Society India. We are based in Bangalore. And I would like to give a brief background of what we do here at WCS India. We have a big marine program which basically has four important work streams. The first one is strengthening marine protected area network, or utilizing area-based management tools to strengthen protected area networks in the country. Our second work stream is curbing the decline of sharks and rays. So we are working at several sites along the Indian coast to look at solutions, find solutions to reduce the reduce the uptake of sharks and rays by fishing vessels or fishing practices. Reducing marine megafauna bycatch. This is the work stream that I look after. Our target is to basically reduce marine megafauna bycatch and find solutions with different stakeholders on how to reduce marine mammal, marine turtle bycatch, and especially dugong as well. Bycatch along the coastlines of, we are basically looking at Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu as of now. And then we have this outward-looking work stream, which is Blue Map India, which we call as a virtual marine museum. You can also go and check it out. It has got a lot of information on various large as well as small marine forms. It has information on policies and regulations on with respect to marine conservation in the country. So please do check it out. Beginning my talk, it's very important to also see the context in which World Dugong Day has been organized. You know that India has got a long coastline of about 7,500 kilometers, and along the entire coastline we find marine mammals. So marine, it's not like we find marine mammals in certain pockets, but in 2019, the Marine Mammal Protected Area Task Force of the IUCN, WCPA, and the Species Survival Commission, they came down to India and they identified certain areas as important marine mammal areas. So, if you look it up, there are certain marine mammal areas. The areas here depicted in the map as the orange areas are important marine mammal areas in the country. There are also certain candidate important marine mammal areas, which are kind of identified as important marine mammal area in the country. And if you look at this map, it's kind of a little deceiving, where we see these are important marine mammal areas. But if you go to any part of India's coastline and you talk to any fisherman over there, they will tell you that they find dolphins or any other species of cetacean, or they find dugongs if you're talking to fishers in Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, or Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So my the point that I would like to make it here is it's not that certain areas are more important than others. It's the lack of information from these areas that makes us identify the other areas as important marine mammal areas. So now, if you look at the map, the areas in orange are the areas from where we have a lot of information on marine mammals and scientific good quality information. That's why we have been able to identify or demarcate these areas as important marine mammal areas. There are certain new tools which are coming up, which have been there in the usage for a very long time. But I would like to point it out that acoustic monitoring, which includes passive as well as active acoustic monitoring, which could be using different kinds of tools. And Isha would be talking after me, so I would leave it to her to explain what is acoustic monitoring, how is it done, and how is it beneficial to marine research. Then autonomous vehicles. There are autonomous vehicles which are kind of vehicles which are remotely operated. They are also called remotely operated vehicles (ROVs). And the kind of autonomous vehicles that are in use currently for monitoring marine mammals include UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, or drones, as you know them popularly, or autonomous underwater vehicles. There are also underwater drones which are used and aerial drones which are used for as autonomous vehicles. There are other category of autonomous underwater or autonomous surface vehicles as well, which can be utilized to collect habitat level data. So it's autonomous vehicles itself is a bigger kind of an umbrella term, which is used to kind of mention remotely operated tools, remotely operated devices which can be deployed to count animals, to collect habitat level data, to even collect samples from an animal. And I think Sagar will be talking after me, so he will be explaining more of that in his talk. There is another very important tool that has been in use for a very long time now. It's called satellite tracking. Satellite tracking is basically using a device which can be fitted onto an animal, and that particular animal can be tracked. You must have seen the examples of birds being tracked. I was very happy to see that there was a photograph of golden Messi behind Johnson's screen, and that he has also tagged golden Nasir and tracked its movements in the upper rivers of Himalaya. So, satellite tracking with other associated accessories can be used very effectively to know where the animal moves, where the animal goes, to identify its movement patterns, to identify where does it go to forage, where does it go to during non-breeding season. So, non-breeding season travel, all those kinds of details can be collected through satellite tracking. It's a very useful tool, and this is something that we should also look it up when we are thinking about marine mammal research and conservation. In India, we have not done any kind of marine mammal tracking, but this is something that can be thought about in the future. I would like to discuss two kind of very important advanced tools which have come up in the recent part in the last around 5 to 10 years. One is the use of very high resolution satellite imagery, and there is one project which is mentioned here, SpaceWay, which is monitoring whales from space, and you can go to their website and check how they do it. So for to get very high resolution imagery from very high resolution imagery for whales, you need to have high resolution satellites which are looking at where do you want to find whales and where do you want to monitor whales. So using these satellites, especially satellites like Worldview and Digital Globe and all, they have very high resolution imagery. Sometimes it goes up to 30 centimeter. So the size of the pixel is 30 centimeter. That means anything which is bigger than 30 centimeter can be detected. And there are efforts to detect various types of animals which live in open landscapes. So, going by terrestrial landscapes, you can think about species like wild ass in India. You can think about they have done it for emperor penguins in Antarctica. They have done it for seals which live on the beaches, haul out on the beaches, and they kind of track it over there using satellite, very high resolution satellite imagery. So any animal which which is larger than 30 centimeter can be detected using VHR or very high resolution imagery. And after when you get this high resolution satellite imagery, what is the next step? So you can use it for multiple kind of analysis. You can use it for population estimation. So you can select an area which is a large enough area for whales or dolphins to exist, and you can take very high resolution imagery at temporal scales at various time scales to collect photographs, and then make an assumption or make an estimation of what is the population like over there. You can also look at certain areas where there is no access, where there is hardly any access. You cannot go there. You cannot deploy your autonomous vehicles like drones. cannot deploy it over there because they are far away in the ocean. So you can use it for understanding distribution of marine mammals. Specifically, this is for large marine mammals. Very small dolphins and all also can be detected. I don't think anybody has tried it yet, but whales, certainly it has been tried, and well, it's quite effective. Then also, if you look at this image is of I think it's from Patagonia, it's from Chile, South America, and there they used they used very high resolution imagery to look at to monitor standings of marine whales. So there was a certain area where the standings were happening again and again and again. So they used very high resolution imagery to look at this imagery and also predict that when would the next standings happen, so that you can go in time and kind of rescue those animals which are life standard. So these kind of applications are there of satellite imagery. Then, if you club satellite imagery and high resolution imagery, now you can club satellite imagery along with high resolution imagery, which can be taken from a boat. You can use a high resolution camera to take photographs. And once you take photographs, you can use those photographs uh, to monitor a lot of things. You can do population monitoring, you can do individual identification, you can also do deep learning. You can use deep learning tools to look at body measurements and all. So, like this example, Fluke Book, it's a very famous project which was initiated to develop a catalog of cetaceans, and it mostly has photographs of many species of dolphins, mostly from the North Atlantic and South Atlantic. But also, if you want to contribute, if you have your own pictures you want to contribute, you can contribute and you can join this particular team. So what they have done is, basically, if you look at this particular picture, this is a fluke of a humpback whale. So you can use artificial intelligence tools where you use different types of neural networks, or you use deep learning to identify individuals in the system. So if you have taken a lot of pictures of different types of whales from different parts of the ocean, you can use artificial intelligence to identify which individual is which and match it. So over a period of time, earlier it was done manually. I've also done it long back in 2012. I was working with this organization called as Mingan Island Cetacean Study in Canada, and we had a catalog of about 1,000 whales, which included about 700 humpback whales, about 50 or odd individuals of blue whales, and multiple other whales. So that time it was done individually. So we used to have two screens, monitors, where in one screen we have the image which is an individually identified whale, using a fluke to identify it individually, and then looking at another fluke and match it. So it was kind of very tedious process. It used to take for one boat trip to identify photographs from one boat trip, used to take multiple days to catalog it properly. So now the technology has helped us in doing it faster. It is obviously, with increasing use of different types of artificial learning tools, we would be doing it much faster than it was done earlier. Like I was giving you an example of how convolutional neural networks, or CNN they are called, they can be used to extract specific features from the image. So the image could come from satellite, or image could come from a drone, or image could come from a boat-based camera. So you can use multiple types of images for this. But once you do this feature extraction, it can be used for multiple things. Like you can measure the size of the body. You can also look at what is the area of the body. So you can do age classification. You can also look at health of the species. So like in this example, the researchers, what they did, they compared populations of North Atlantic right whale with southern right whale. So North Atlantic right whale is a species of baleen whale which is under threat, and I think only 250 to 300 odd individuals are left in the wild. It is a critically endangered population. And if you compare that with southern right whale populations are still better than North Atlantic right whale. So they compared body condition of North Atlantic right whale with southern right whale populations, and they found out that southern right whale, all age classes of North Atlantic right whale, where we had lower body conditions. So they were weaker or less healthier compared to southern right whale populations. So this is one example of how to use these imageries to do body measurements to understand health conditions. Another tool that has come up in the recent past, in the last 10 years, is next generation sequencing. it is nothing but creating a database of the entire genome of a particular species of animal. Uh, like in this picture, blue whale's whole genome sequence has already been done. In when it started I think 20 25 years back when the first species to be sequenced completely, first species genome to be sequenced completely was human being. So Homo sapiens whole genome was done for the first time, and it costed us about $3 billion. But now the cost of that particular whole genome sequencing has come down drastically. Now to do a whole genome sequence, you require $3,000. So from $3 billion, it has come down to $3,000. But it also has multiple other utilities. You can look at genetic differentiation between different populations using whole genome sequencing. You can identify when the animals diverged from other closely related species. You can also look at diseases. You can also look at mutations, transcriptomics, proteomics. Whole lot of options open up once you have the whole genome sequence of a particular species. And NGS, as you call it in short, next generation sequencing, is the tool to use for most of the species. It has already been done for multiple species in the country, and I think it is also high time that we do it for other endangered species in the country, specifically dugong. So, what are the next steps for Indian researchers? So, I thought about it that there are many tools that can be used. Acoustic monitoring. You can use UAVs. We have already been using it for dugongs. We can use satellite tracking. Nobody has done it yet. We can think about it. Very high resolution imagery for certain pockets in the country, especially important marine mammal areas to begin with, and then maybe extend it to other areas. And also looking at how can we integrate AI tools in that. And one of the important thing that has happened with the country is that we have got the best software companies, the best IT companies in the world, and definitely a tie-up between private and public sector would be very important here. And we should definitely try doing that, because as academic institutions or as research institutions or NGOs, we have limited capacity. But if we tie up with private sector organizations, definitely it's something that will give us an edge over other researchers in the world. So next steps for Indian researchers would be to identify other hotspots of marine mammal occurrence. If you look at the figure on the right, this gives you a lot of details on where the strandings happen. So you can use very high resolution imageries in certain pockets to identify why the strandings are happening irregularly. What are the issues? Is it because of other pressures like overfishing and something else, or is it because of some other reason, because of currents or something, some environmental reason? Then there are other opportunities for us. The image on the left shows the core habitat or the critical habitat of dugongs. It is a work in progress, and it is also under review. But if we use these high resolution imageries, or if we use these new age technologies to monitor these areas, which are basically the red areas on the left image, it will be very helpful, because these are the areas which require immediate attention. Then we can also use it for transboundary surveys, specifically using drones which can fly longer, which can fly faster, longer, and also using satellite tracking. These kind of tools are actually something that we should think about when we are planning for next level projects. So that is it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So,
Let's stop here.
yes, yes, sir. So, we have a question from the audience.
Okay.
So, it says, Hi, Anand, creating a genome sequence library is possible in India?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. So it has already been done for multiple species, and it has been done for great Indian bustard. It has been done for, let me think. I think it has been done for other species as well, and definitely it is possible to do it for marine mammals. And in WI also there is a project going on which is trying to create whole genome sequence for multiple species. So definitely we should start with endangered species, for which we need immediately require some conservation action, and then we can extend it to other species from critically endangered and endangered. We can follow the IUCN criteria to identify which species to go first.
Right. So we have another kind of long question. I'm going to show this. So, may any kind of lesser technology, false color composite of remote sensing and AI, all three together, can it be used in determining exact dugong population?
Yeah, so with false color composites and other older satellite imageries, what you cannot estimate population, but you can look at habitats. So people have looked at, especially people from Space Applications Center Ahmedabad, they have looked at remote sensed imagery, older remote sensed false colors composites and all, to look at coral reef distribution in the country. They have also looked at, they have prepared a wetland atlas for the country. They've also used it for identifying seagrass habitats. Also, although that was a failure because seagrass had the same spectral signature as that of sand, so it did not work. So I would suggest that it's not possible for estimating dugong population, because exact population again, even with high technology tools, you cannot get exact population. You'll get some estimate which will have a lot of errors and a lot of confidence intervals over there. But going by older technology, to do it for certain kind of habitats, marine habitats, it's possible. Like mangroves for coral reefs, it's possible. But for dugong population, I don't think it's possible.
Right. So we will just take two questions for now and we'll move on to the next speaker because of the time constraint. Thank you so much, sir, for
Thank you.
sharing your insights. So next, we would like to invite our next expert speaker, Mr. Sagar Rajpurkar, and he will be talking about the use of technology in dugong research in India. Mr. Sagar is a PhD student at Wildlife Institute of India and a principal project associate with the Campa Dugong team. His research revolves around the use of UAVs, AI, and deep learning to study dugongs and analyze their behavior. He has gained national recognition for his extensive work in the aerial monitoring component of the project. Sagar, the
Uh,
stage is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Ushni, for the lovely introduction. So, yeah, first of all, I'd like to wish everyone a very happy Dugong Day. And I'd start with the presentation. So, is the presentation visible to everyone on screen?
Yes, the presentation is visible.
Yeah. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Sagar Rajpurkar, and today I'm going to talk about the topic from pixels to conservation, a Dugong case study using artificial intelligence and machine learning. So, today, basically, what I'm going to talk about is how, at the Campa Dugong Recovery Project, we have been using technology to study dugongs. So, let's start with a quick introduction about dugongs. So, dugongs are basically marine mammals, which are also commonly known as sea cows, that have inspired stories of mermaids and are exclusively marine mammals. They have a lifespan of about 70 years, and an adult dugong grows up to the size of 3.5 to 4 meters and weighs up to 400 kgs. They feed exclusively on seagrasses, and you find them in shallow coastal waters. The distribution starts from the Persian Gulf all the way to the Middle East. You have them distributed in India, Southeast Asia, and Australia. The largest chunk of the population of dugongs are found in the Middle East and in Australia, where you see them in large herds. But in countries like India, we have small isolated populations. In India, dugongs are distributed in the states of Tamil Nadu, Andaman Nicobar, and Gujarat. And dugongs surface to, dugongs, being marine mammals, have to surface to breathe every 5 to 8 minutes. They are classified as vulnerable according to IUCN. So with this, I'd like to show a clip of how a dugong sighting looks like on field. So when we try traditional methods like boat surveys, as you can see on the screen, there is a dugong that surfaces and it goes again down. So it surfaces every 5 to 7 minutes. So it's not always on the surface. The advantage here is they are found in shallow coastal waters, so they don't go really offshore. But then, sorry, I'll play the video again. Yeah. But then dugongs are not surface active like other marine mammals, like dolphins, which makes them very difficult to study. Also, dugongs perceive boats as threats. So, traditional methods like boat surveys are not very effective, especially when you want to assess the population or study their behavior, as with boats coming in closer proximity, dugongs tend to get disturbed. So with this, initially when the project started, we tried boat surveys, but they were not very effective, and that's when we decided to shift to technology. So when we looked at the studies that were done internationally, we found out that a lot of studies, especially coming from Australia, for studying marine mammals, especially dugongs, were done by manned aerial vehicles. These basically were aircrafts which were modified for aerial surveys. They were specifically designed in such a way that aerial surveys could be undertaken, where you had a survey leader, mid-seat observers, and rear-seat observers with curtains separating so that everyone could take individual observations. And with that, things like population estimation, density estimates were calculated. And there were a lot of drawbacks to the area, to the surveys, but it was one of the best effective ways. There were a lot of recommendations of manned aerial surveys to be conducted in countries like India, but due to the cost effect, due to it being the cost being extremely high, no aerial surveys were undertaken in India. But with the beginning of technology and development of sciences in the field of unmanned aerial vehicles, that made technology even more accessible. So, what are unmanned aerial vehicles? Unmanned aerial vehicles, are commonly referred to as UAVs, are aircrafts without a pilot on board. There are basically four types of UAVs that can be classified based on platform. They are multi-rotor drones, fixed wing drones, single rotor helicopters, and fixed wing VTOLs. That is fixed wing drone that can do vertical takeoff and landing. So with this, since the cost effectivity was lesser compared to manned aerial vehicles as a part of Campa Dugong recovery project, we decided to use multi-rotor drones for our studies. So when we started looking at the study design, we found out a very important paper, which was by Roy et al., that showed a basic flowchart of how a study has to be planned to study any marine megafauna. So when we look at any marine megafauna, the first thing that we need to figure out is if the species have been studied previously using the UAVs. Then the next question is to identify the species specific traits and their reaction to drones. It is very crucial to find out how the animal reacts to a drone if it gets disturbed, or if there are other co-occurring species that get disturbed by the drones. And then we look at factors like how much time does the animal spend on the surface, what is their surfacing time, and how much time it is available for detection. So with this, the next crucial component that one needs to figure while designing a study is choose on information that can be collected uh, based on the research question using the drone. So a lot of factors could be in question depending on what a person wants to research on. Like you have health, morphometrics, feeding behavior, social interactions, distribution, population estimation, photo identification, estimation of biomass, and a lot of other things. So based on the research question, we look at the selection of an appropriate airframe and payload. So airframe can be a fixed wing drone or it could be a multi-rotor drone. And then the payload, which would be the camera, has to be selected according to what needs to be studied. It could be an multispectral infrared RGB camera. It could be having a LiDAR sensor. It could be a thermal sensor or a normal high resolution camera as we are using as a part of the project. Then the next factor, which is very key, is designing the plan for the shorty, which would include the altitude, speed, orientation, camera angle, and appropriate weather. And look at an ideal drone that can actually do the following things, and the flight plan is made based on the endurance of the drone. And then the last and the most crucial part is data management and processing. So we look at how the data has to be stored on field, storage, storage types, how the data has to be analyzed using softwares. Like you have several softwares like Agisoft, Metashape, Pix4D, and then use of artificial intelligence and machine learning tools that can be integrated. So there were several advantages of unmanned aerial system over manned systems. First of it being it is extremely cost effective when you compare it with manned aerial surveys, since they are charged with electric batteries which are rechargeable, there is little to no carbon emission. Drones, especially the multi-rotor drones, can fly at lower elevations. They have a higher maneuverability, and they can be used for focal follows for behavioral studies. And with the zoom technology coming in, with drones these days having very high zoom, what is very important is the animal don't get disturbed, as there is a barrier. Like the drone is in the air and the animal usually is in the water, so there is a barrier medium which causes less to no disturbance, especially when the drone is flying high with the zoom capabilities. So with this, we started our surveys. So as a part of Campa Dugong project, we carried out aerial surveys in critical dugong habitats with the main aim of dugong detection. So several habitats were already identified as critical habitats where dugong sightings were very frequent. So based on it, we carried out surveys and we were successful in sighting dugongs. Along with dugongs, we saw multiple co-occurring species in the same range that of dugongs, which included dolphins, rays, sharks, turtles. The data that we collected was in form of videos where we collected data from a resolution of 2.7K at 60 frames per second, which led us to a huge data set with the tune of 3.5 GB for a 5-minute video. So in the image, you can see like we would fly the drone, and whenever the animal is detected, we would get the elevation slightly lower and focal follow the animal and get the footage so that we can study behavior, estimate the densities and population depending on different techniques. So these are a few of the sightings that we got, which included spotted eagle rays, which are classified as endangered. We had manta rays, which are vulnerable according to IUCN Red List, zebra sharks, and dugongs, all of them which were of conservation priority, which led us to the first paper, which was also the first study which was carried out in Indian waters using lightweight unmanned aerial vehicles. So this was the first aerial survey that was undertaken in India, and we were fairly successful in detecting several marine megafauna. So after that, we carried out our efforts in all three in all three dugong distribution states. And in the state of Andaman Nicobar, we carried out population estimation surveys for density and population estimates, in which we had more than 150 sightings so far. So these are few of the images from different habitats across Andaman Nicobar. We have covered north and middle, south Andaman, and north and middle, and even South Andaman as a part of the study, where we have had several sightings. We also carried out our surveys inside the Dugong Conservation Reserve, and the highlight of it was mother and calf pairs that were sighted. We basically had conducted aerial sorties of fixed width aerial transits, and we were fairly successful in detecting dugongs, and we have been able to establish the density estimates. Moving to the state of Gujarat, the key highlight here was we were able to get the record of the first sighting of dugong from the west coast of India, wherein we detected two dugongs from the Gulf of Kutch Marine National Park, which shows that there is a small population of dugongs that is there in the area, which was previously believed to be extinct, but now we have photographic evidence to prove the same. Then what was happening was, with this, we were collecting a lot of data on dugongs. But we decided, what we wanted to do a little bit more, and that's when we decided to take the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning approach. So me with my collaborator Glenn and his team, we decided to use artificial intelligence and machine learning so that the data that we were collecting in terms of pixels could be used into dugong conservation, as we already had large data sets of high resolution. So the aim was to automate the entire process and save human effort of rewatching the videos. So we decided to automate the entire process and reduce human errors. You training a model that can make all this automated. And the main objective of the study was to make technology accessible to everyone, especially to our stakeholders who can use this tool that we would develop using artificial intelligence and machine learning. So with this, we decided to take the videos that we had, and we used frame skip method, in which for every frame, we would select every 25th frame and all the frames were discarded, so that we would get frames that were distinct from each other for training the model. So for creation of the model, we used a training and validation dataset which comprised of videos with 25,500 frames and 31 HD images with the spread as shown in the flowchart. So a total of 814 frames were used to train the model, which comprised of 1,128 objects, with the aim of making a model that can actually detect and distinguish different species based on aerial imagery. So for that, we first trained it in YOLO V5 to see the accuracy and precision. So we trained it across 100 epochs, wherein we got a precision value of 90% and a very high accuracy of 97% for the training and validation dataset. We also got a high mean average precision value, which showed that the model that we are training was effective as part of the training and validation dataset. So we decided to test the model, giving it videos which it had never seen. So for the test dataset, we used our other imageries or other videos which were not used for training to test the accuracy, and we were surprised to find great results, wherein we got an absolute score for detection of dugongs and zebra shark and a very high score for dolphins. This showed that species like dolphins, zebra sharks, and dugongs were effectively being identified based on the AI model that we had trained. We also tested it for similar looking species like manta rays and spotted eagle rays, where we again got absolute scores, which was really surprising for me because species which look very similar to the human eye, the AI was able to distinguish them. And that showed that the model that we are making can be used in real life scenarios. But then it failed in terms of turtles, wherein we got very low F1 score, because what we saw in terms of turtles is because because the model that we were training was based off images, the AI was confusing corals and the seabed rocks as turtles. That is the reason why we got a very low score for turtles. But apart from that, the model that we made was, very accurate in identifying species and distinguishing them. So we decided to make a tool that can be used in live view, that can take a video and automate the entire process. This is how the result of the tool looks like. So as you can see, the dugong here is being tracked. It is being identified with the numbers fluctuating to be the confidence values, and the AI model that we have made is very accurate, and the model is confident about the species. Similarly, you can see here for spotted eagle rays. So in each frame, despite the waves, despite the underwater, despite the glare and underwater undulations, the AI is very accurate in identifying, and it is fairly confident with identification of the species. So this is how we started using AI. Now the way forward here is we want to make a model that can identify dugongs, especially from different elevation ranges in different water parameters, in clear as well as turbid waters, and across a magnitude of factors that are seen in the ocean. And to conclude, whatever we had done using AI and machine learning, we conducted the first study to identify multiple species effectively from Indian waters. We made a scalable model that can be further trained to detect potential threats as well. Like we made this model to detect marine megafauna. It can also be used to detect boats, fishing nets, and other potential threats in an area. Data of other co-occurring species can be added to this model, which can be used on the go by our stakeholders. And it can be used as an effective tracking and monitoring tool by our stakeholders like state forest departments. And the main aim here of making this AI trained model is to make technology accessible to everyone, so that whenever anyone has an aerial footage using the model that we have trained, it can be effectively used to identify the species and to get more insights of the same. So with this, I'd like to acknowledge the following people, and especially the entire Campa Dugong team and my collaborator Glenn, who has been instrumental as part of this study. And yeah, thank you for listening to me very patiently, and a very happy World Dugong Day to everyone.
Thank you, Sagar. Thank you so much. So, we do not have any questions for you at the moment. So, maybe we'll take some questions at the end of the talk. Okay, wait. I think there is one. Right. First is AI model able to detect a completely new species?
So it depends. Like when you train, like for an AI model to detect a new species, you need training and validation data set. So firstly, you need to train the model to, I mean, you have to teach or train the model to identify the species you want it to train. And after that, you can use it to test it. So until and unless you don't feed it with a data set, like you won't have a model in the first place to actually test it. So the first step to any AI model is basically having a training set and then validating it to see that if it is effective, and then later you can go on to testing the same.
Right. Okay. So I think we don't have any other questions, so we'll just move on. Thank you so much, Sagar. So, right. So now we would like to invite our keynote speaker of the event, Dr. Eric Angel Ramos, to talk about new frontiers in Sirenian science, the role of cutting edge technologies. Dr. Ramos is a scientist at FINS and a member of IUCN SSC Sirenian Specialist Group for Mesoamerica. His research focuses on marine mammals, including dolphin behavior, manatee communication, and octopus genetics. His postdoctoral work revolves around using drones and bioacoustics to study manatee health and behavior. Dr. Moss has conducted innovative studies on marine mammals in the Caribbean, Florida, and Cameroon, such as dolphin and manatee responses to drones, drone based photo identification of Antillean manatees, and cetacean behavior. Welcome, Dr. Eric. We are
Thank
very
you.
happy to have you.
Thank you so much. Honored to be invited.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to try and share my screen now.
Yes.
Is that okay now?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. Um, well, hi everybody. My name is Archangel Ramos. I'm a PhD mainly in animal behavior and marine science. I've studied primarily dolphins and manatees for the last um, 12 to 13 years. I kind of changed the name of my talk today to Frontiers in Manatee Science because as I realized there would be a lot of dugong information, and I was right. I've switched up just to focus in a little bit more on manatees and to bring you all along to my side of the world. I'm currently in Belize, in Central America, which, if you look on the left of the map here, is in the range of the West Indian manatee. So here we study the Antillean and the Florida manatee up in Florida. I'll tell you a little bit about work we've done both with Amazonian manatee vocalizations and African manatees. To orient you, this is of course a cute baby in a rehabilitation center nearby, but this is the Antillean manatee, one of the subspecies of the West Indian that lives in this area of the Caribbean down to Brazil. Now, most of what I'm going to focus on today is the combination of two different technologies that I've been able to use and drive the innovation in for many years, which is drones and bioacoustics. It's the same with manatees that they are underwater and like dugongs are not surfacing. So finding them is quite difficult. Often as well, they can be varying levels of of intolerant or stressed by the presence of boats. So sometimes even getting near them with a boat is very challenging. Now, in the Caribbean Sea and here along the coast of Belize, we were lucky enough to be able to use drones because, in part, the waters were clear and the manatees were quite visible. So back in 2016, we started using drones to photo identify and count manatees around small islands along the coast. The first things we really wanted to understand was how are these animals responding to drones? Because it was a new tool that we hadn't used before, and we weren't sure if it would have an effect. Similarly, boats have an effect on the animals, but we try to take that into account when we're doing our research using a drone. At the time, we weren't clear how we could do that. So we compared the responses of dolphins and manatees, and I'll only tell you that briefly. Manatees were very sensitive to the presence of the drone. Many manatees were, and often exhibited fleeing responses, which is not something we actually were predicting and we were rather surprised by. Additionally, so in this graph, with the, let's say these are 10 different events of animals responding, each extra bar means that the manatee responded again during the same flight. So as we would approach them or increase or decrease altitude, sometimes the animals would keep responding to the drone. And the important part here at the end of the graph is that even at 110 meters, one of the animals continued to turn and orient away from the drone. So uh, we had to devise protocols to really mitigate this response. And this was a really important thing for us to understand, because if we were not in some way characterizing what was happening to the animals through behavioral observations that were enabled by the drone and the small, these are the small quadcopters, the stability of these quadcopters and their high resolution imagery allowed us to assess this. And now we can take this into account for future work. During this time, while we were exploring the use of drones around the islands in Belize, around one island called St. George's Key, we started to understand that we could photo identify animals and even track them over time as they accrued things like scars from human interactions. Some animals just had natural seeming scars that over subsequent years have allowed us to identify them again. And actually, this small juvenile that I saw in 2016, I recently saw in 2023. And it's now quite a large looking adult. So we explored the use of the tool for photo identifying manatees. We actually really had no inclination at the beginning it was feasible, and for all most of what we thought was that it was going to be quite difficult. And in some cases it was, but in some cases, in a proportion of the population, you could actually track them reliably, especially over a short period of time. So we were seeing the sight fidelity of animals over weeks and months at different times of year. Over subsequent years, we're still not sure how well it'll work. These animals don't get as scarred up as, for example, the Florida man. It's also allowed us to look at interspecies interactions between things like dolphins and manatees. So in this video, the dolphins actually separated the mother and calf manatee and were harassing both the manatee baby and the mother for about 6 or 7 minutes before they seemed to get bored and go away. Now, that was really interesting because we also followed up on observations of scarring that resemble dolphin bites from the rehabilitation here in Belize called Wild Tracks. And what we found was that these baby manatees, orphan baby manatees, were sometimes coming in with bite marks from dolphins, which correlated with what we were seeing in the wild through opportunistic observations of dolphins harassing babies. Now we're using things like infrared thermography and thermal imagery to try to see how well we can detect animal movement at different times of day, in different circumstances in which they're not really clearly visible. An important thing about manatees is that while sometimes they're in very clear water, as I've shown you in some really beautiful imagery, in most of these places it's actually quite turbid. And so the visual signature of the manatees themselves is quite poor in terms of that we're seeing, a little blip of a brown animal in brown water. So thermal imagery and other kinds of advances in imaging techniques are helping us understand how we can better detect the movements of manatees when they're actually not visible at the time. It takes a decent amount of post-processing of these videos to make the animals kind of salient for different kinds of behavioral analysis. One other element that the drone has really facilitated is finding real important regions for manatees at small scales. So at varying scales from the size of a little bigger than a manatee itself, a little bigger than a 3 to 4 meter manatee. Some of these areas are as big as that. Some of them were several 100 meters long. But what they all seem to share is this characteristic that manatees seem to live there. And as we started doing drone observations at fine scales over these areas near the Belize Barrier Reef, we were finding that these animals seem to inhabit these holes. And previous research had shown that animals inhabited holes all over different parts of Belize. And we've seen really similar in the last few years the ability to fly the drone from an island without having to get in a boat and be able to fly over animals at high altitudes has been really critical to them. Now, another way we wanted to try to protect them, because we weren't sure if it would work, was looking at their sounds. And manatees make these little squeaks seen in the spectrogram here, these kind of. Now, we don't know much about their communication. We know that it's really important that mother and calves communicate. And we know that in some way their acoustic activity correlates with their lives and their behavior. But we were starting from scratch. So we found some of these important manatee holes and we decided, okay, let's put out some recorders. And right away, we started to see some pretty cool things like sounds that had really high ultrasonic frequencies going into, like frequencies that were not really reported for wild manatees before. And we were able to take those same vocalizations and through the use of passive acoustic recordings deployed in different places in Florida, Belize, and Panama, compare the vocalizations of the different subspecies of West Indian manatee. And we found that there were some interesting differences in which, in some calls, manatees were more similar between the subspecies in one area and more dissimilar in others. And it was interesting because we don't really know much about how they might vary geographically in their vocalization. So this kind of gave us some insight as to how we could fit this into a global scale, some of the passive acoustic monitoring work informed by drones that we were able to implement in areas where we had really clear waters and could see what the animals were doing. So we put out these recorders and looked at temporal trends in their activity patterns at these sites and found that at two different areas that were maybe 1.5 kilometers apart, they displayed very different characteristics of activity. In site A, showing really high peaks in vocal activity in the nighttime and early morning, and really low at site B, generally similar in the daytime. What does it mean for their activity patterns? It's still early on, but we have some inclination that maybe they're more nocturnal in some of their activity. We were able to use all this information to inform local conservation and help implement no wake zones in the area to limit impacts to manatees. So at a small scale, all of this information acquired through novel technologies helped us piece together some useful recommendations for protections that were implemented. And working with our colleagues in Cameroon, we deployed recorders out in Lake Osa and found really interestingly similar patterns in both the kinds of calls that African manatees make and the kinds of patterns in which they're vocalizing less in the daytime and more in the night and the evening. Many of these species were hunted frequently, so it could be a remnant of animals that are limiting their activity in the daytime to avoid human interactions. Similarly, we compared acoustic methods of detection, including visual point scan of standing from a boat looking for the manatees, 360 sonar, and passive acoustics, and found that with passive acoustics, we were able to detect the animals more regularly and with a much higher frequency rate, which actually helped us in understanding where they were using for their critical habitats in these lakes. In Siancan Biosphere Reserve in Mexico, we used drones to study the animal fine scale manatee movement around their sinkholes, these freshwater cenotes. We flew drones around these habitats, and in this video sped up, I think, 8 times. You'll see a little bit of poor tourism interaction behavior, which we're hoping to inform with some of our observations. If you look at all those moving boats, there's a mother and calf manatee right behind them, and they start circling it and pass right over it. And unfortunately, they're not fully aware of the impact they're having, but we're using our technology and our scientific insights to try to better design these regulations. We've taken those same drones and used them to ground truth measurements of body size in Antillean manatees in captivity. We now are using them in Florida to look at how the poor health outcomes of many of the animals are associating with their body condition in the wild, because we're able to measure a lot of them in large aggregations using programs like morphometrics where we can get estimates of body size, and then try to put them into some useful categories of distinctions into how well the animal's doing health-wise, where really thin animals are probably not doing great, and really chunky animals is what we want to see. And I'll leave you there because I think I kind of dosed you with as much as I could give you of manatee drones and acoustics, and happy to take any questions if there's time for that.
Yes, we definitely do have some time for questions. So we don't really have any questions right now, but I'm sure there'll be more coming your way during the panel discussion.
Sounds great.
Right. So thank you. Wait. Yes. So we have a question. So the study shows that manatees get affected by drone presence. Does this behavior changes when we observe manatees that are living near human disturbed areas?
So yeah, that's a great question. Um, the short answer is we have not done those studies yet. But some of our inclination from observations of manatees in Florida, for example, Florida manatees are much more inundated with the presence of boats regularly. And as such, they're a bit habituated to their presence because they're constantly surrounded by them. And so you see different behaviors in these species in terms of how they act around human disturbed areas. But we haven't done any studies on drone impacts of those areas. In the areas where we have done them in Belize, animals are more often than not sensitive to the presence of boats, and there's only small populations that might be not. But it would be a really interesting study to do in the future. One point I'll make too is that in a study we did follow up in captivity where we looked at manatee responses to the drone, a strange but unexpected aspect of that was that sometimes when we took off the drone near the like I think it was like 20-30 meters from the pool, manatees would respond before the drone was even in the air. So it was an indication that it might have just been the sound itself is startling to the animals in a way that, despite not having any experience with drones or boats, these captive animals were responding just like the wild ones, but just to the sound of the drone itself starting.
Right. Interesting. Very interesting. So, right, we'll just have time to take this one question. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Ramos.
Thank you.
So, next we would like to invite our next expert speaker, Ms. Isha Bopardekar, who will discuss the use of acoustics in marine mammals. Ms. Bopardekar is a PhD student at IISER Tirupati, working in collaboration with Lisa Yang Center for Conservation Bioacoustics at Cornell University. Her research focuses on the bioacoustics of marine mammals in India, applying acoustics to estimate cetacean population densities and understand their space use and occurrence patterns. She has studied a range of species from the whistle characteristics of Indian Ocean humpback dolphins to the singing activity of Arabian Sea humpback whales. So, Isha,
Hi.
welcome, Isha. Hi,
Hi. Thanks for inviting me.
very welcome.
Share my screen.
Yes.
One second. All right. I might keep my video off. My internet is not great. So I'll come back.
That's okay.
All right. Is that visible? All good?
Yes, this is visible. Yes, good.
Okay. So, all right. Should I start?
Yes, yes, you can start.
Sorry.
You can start. You can start.
Okay. All good. Right. Yeah. Okay. Hi everyone, thanks for the introduction. Like she said, I'm a PhD student at ICER, and I've been using acoustics to study marine mammals. Most of my work is cetaceans, not related to dugongs or manatees, sadly, but mostly it's whales, dolphins, and porpoises. And I use acoustics to answer questions about these animals. So I have a little sound clip, if that plays, because this is one of my favorite sounds. It's a dwarf minke whale. I think it's a very interesting sound, and for a long time nobody knew what it was. They called it the Star Wars sound, but it was described very recently, and it belongs to a dwarf minke whale. So before we go into acoustics, I'll just introduce the Indian marine life. Like across the EEZ, the exclusive economic zone, we have about 26 species of cetaceans that we know of, and you can find a lot of these records on the Marine Mammals of India website. Um, but most of these records that we have are based on stranded specimens or opportunistic sightings on oceanography cruises. And this is not just for the rare deep diving species like beaked whales, but also for the commonly found cetaceans, like your coastal animals like humpback dolphins and bottlenose dolphins, say on the east coast. So there have been very few dedicated studies on cetaceans in India. Of course, this has changed in the past decade. So we now have projects that are aimed towards understanding the ecology, behavior, and population of these animals. But again, some of these studies have been limited mostly to Maharashtra, Kerala, Karnataka, Lakshadweep being the recent one, uh, a lot on the west coast, and it's catching up on the east coast now. But even along, if you look at both coasts together, a lot of these studies are more focused on coastal areas due to logistical and financial constraints. A tricky problem with monitoring cetaceans is the environment they live in. We've seen, like, even for your dugong studies and, of course, other stuff, these animals spend a lot of their time underwater. They spend about 90% of their lives underwater. So, what we see at the surface is extremely limiting in terms of the information that it can provide about these animals. But a good thing about marine mammals, especially cetaceans, is that they use sound for almost all kinds of communication, right? From baleen whales to porpoises, they use sound for social, reproductive, and parental communication. Dolphins and porpoises use sound for navigation and prey detection. So we get a lot of information about these animals just by listening to the sounds that they produce when they interact with each other and when they interact with their environment. So I have a few. This is a fin whale pulse train. I hope it's audible. And this is a dolphin echolocation train. And for folks who have worked in coastal waters, you know that this is one animal that dominates the entire soundscape. Snapping shrimp. They're incredible animals, but very difficult to filter out of any kind of recording that you have if it's close to the shore. And I also have a manatee call. I don't study dugongs, nothing related to dugong acoustics, but I do have manatees that I found somewhere. Okay. So, how do we record these animals in the environment that they're in? Acoustic recording technology has evolved a lot in the marine world. We have very sophisticated recording setups, mostly due to the environmental demands of the system. So the recording equipment in the marine environment has become more and more sophisticated, whereas in the terrestrial, it's very simple. But the kind of questions that you can answer for the marine environment are still very basic, as opposed to getting really, really fine scale information in the terrestrial environment with very simple recording setups. There are very many unknowns in the marine environment in terms of sounds, especially in the fish world, and a lot needs to be figured out. But depending on the research question, there are a number of recording setups that can be used. What suits best usually depends on the question that needs to be addressed. So dipping hydrophones are best for conducting concurrent behavior and acoustic sampling. You can see things as they happen. You can simultaneously record your focal species, and everything is happening right in front of you live. So these there are also static setups that are best for long-term monitoring. You can deploy a device with a suitable duty cycle, and it can record for months. And it's really good to cover very remote areas where you cannot keep going to survey every so often. And these can just stay out there and record for uh, day and night for maybe 6 7 months at a time. You also have mobile platforms now like towed arrays that complement vessel based surveys, and we'll look at this in a bit and I'll talk more about them. um, and there's also gliders now that are very cool units that can remotely work. It's like an unmanned underwater vehicle. It can cover vast distances in remote areas, and a lot of them are equipped to transmit data live as they come up to the surface via iridium. And you can deploy these in extremely remote areas, and have them go through the entire survey area. They go across the water depth zigzag, and you can pilot them to cover vast distances. And when we say we record sounds and we use sounds to study cetaceans, what does this actually mean? How do we do this? We spend a lot of time looking at sound, and sound can be represented as a spectrogram, which is a plot of frequency versus time. And different sounds based on their time frequency features look very different. Echolocation clicks like these look like they're very broadband signals. So they'll just have you have your waveform. This is not a plot of the echolocation click, not the best representation, but you can see how they are in the time and frequency features that they have. The burst pulses are echolocation clicks that happen in very close time intervals, so they take up an almost tonal look. And whistles are pure tones. They're tonal sounds that have a bit of variation, quite a bit of variation in frequency across time. And this is one of my humpback dolphin sounds. It's a bit faint. And using acoustics is great. It's very interesting to listen to dolphins and see fun spectrograms. But what does this actually tell us about these animals? And what are the kind of questions that you can answer? What are the kind of real world problems that you can solve using these tools? So my current project uses acoustic monitoring to answer broad scale questions for two species, the Indian Ocean humpback dolphin and the finless porpoise. Both are found in coastal waters. They're right in the middle of all kinds of human dominated pressure. And it's increasingly important to develop some conservation measures for these species. But we lack a lot of baseline data for these animals. We don't know their occurrence patterns. We don't have estimates of their population, no abundance estimates. We don't know a lot about their hotspots. So, this is something we wanted to begin to address, but it's a bit tricky to do using traditional visual methods, especially for the finless porpoise. They're very difficult to study visually. They are highly cryptic. They are very elusive. They have very short surfacing patterns. They don't form big groups, and they don't have a fin, so they're very easy to miss at the surface. Um, but like we saw, like all cetaceans, finless porpoises across age and sex classes produce very distinct echolocation clicks. So acoustics is a great tool to study these animals. They produce very distinct narrow band high frequency echolocation clicks that are highly directional. They're great for localization. They also vocalize constantly. They're they vocalize every 3 to 5 seconds. Apart from this, and they're very easy to tell apart from the humpback dolphins. And acoustics is fairly weatherproof. Once you have a framework in place, it's fairly labor and cost effective. And we've observed that for finless porpoises, on most of our surveys, we had almost 3 times more acoustic sightings than acoustic detections than the visual detection. So my study focused on developing a framework to use acoustics to estimate densities for both humpback dolphins and finless porpoises. But I'll talk more about the finless porpoises today in the interest of time. So the study we do is along the Sindhu coast of Maharashtra. We use a combination of acoustic and visual line transect surveys in a distance sampling framework. The visual surveys are standard distance sampling protocol where you have observers who are constantly looking for any signs of the focal species. Every time you spot an animal, you take down the GPS, you note down the angle and the radial distance to the sighting. That's how you get your perpendicular distances. But at the same time, we have acoustic surveys that are going on. And for that, we use a towed array, like I mentioned when we saw the recording setup. So this is a mobile platform that is stored behind a boat, and it has a recording unit and is connected to multiple hydrophones, all working together to gather sounds. And we tow this behind the boat where it's constantly listening to its environment. So it acts like an independent observer. And this is simultaneously with the visual surveys. So from the sounds we collect, we can then identify and filter out citation sounds. And from these, we use these sounds to actually get a location of the vocalizing animal from the survey track. And this then goes into a distance sampling framework and gives us abundance and densities for the species. Exactly how distance sampling works for any other marine mammal species in the same visual framework where you have your perpendicular distances. So, like I said, we noticed during the visual surveys that we had very low visual sightings for porpoises. However, our acoustic detections were almost 3 times more than the visual encounters. And this difference was consistent throughout all survey replicates. We did about 9 surveys through 2020 and 2023. And we had a total of 149 acoustic encounters, group encounters of finless porpoises. But our visual encounters were only about 39. And even from those 39 visual encounters, 35 were mixed. They had an acoustic sighting also. So we found that overall, the acoustic method outperforms the visual data collection by quite a bit for finless porpoises. And now the next step is to convert this information into animal densities. Like I mentioned, we use a distance sampling framework, and we use the acoustics and the sounds that these animals produce to localize them and obtain a perpendicular distance of the vocalizing animal from the track line. And then these distances go into a distance sampling framework, and from that we can estimate densities for the animals in that particular area. So we're curious what our results will look like as we go ahead. And along with mobile acoustic platforms, we also have a project that is doing static deployments in 2 locations of the west coast. One is Netrani and one is off Kerala, Puvar. Uh, so this is primarily to look at presence of baleen whales. It started as a project to look at presence of the Arabian Sea humpback whale, which are critically endangered. They don't migrate. They're resident to the Arabian Sea, mostly moving north and south within the area. And this was started mostly to look at this species. So I have this is what the Arabian Sea humpback whale sounds like. And while we were listening for the humpback whales, we also recorded blue whales, and this was only along the Kerala recorder. And the Arabian Sea humpback whale work was written up as a paper by our intern Maya D'Souza, and it's published now, so you can read it up. I can send a link if anybody is interested. And Divya is taking up this baleen whale monitoring further as we go ahead. And that is it from me.
Thank you so much, Isha.
Thank you. That was very good.
Hi. So, oh, hi. There we can see you.
Sorry.
Yeah. So we do have one question, and we'll be taking just one because of the time
Sure.
constraint.
Yeah.
So yes. Sorry. Here.
I don't know anything about drones.
No, no, this is full.
How can you
So for
start
some,
learning? Oh,
yeah, for someone completely new to the field, how can they start learning acoustic data collection and analysis?
you can data collection. I think it's just something you dive into because I don't. There are repositories for acoustic data like docets, and I think uh, there's another whole database of marine mammal sounds, but doesn't like unless you collect your own data. That's the only way to do it. Analysis, Raven has great tutorials online. So the Cornell lab that I'm part of, they have a whole series of tutorials, and we actually have a workshop coming up. So if somebody wants to sign up, please do. That's happening in July for a week. So, yeah. But
Oh,
there's a ton of online material nowadays that you can. There are a lot of tutorials, but I mean I highly recommend having your own data to work on. Then you know where it's going wrong and where it's going right.
right. Those audio files were something really cool. Thank you
Some
for
are,
sharing that with us.
some are the humpback whale from Netrani, that's the bunnies, and some are from Cornell.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. So now we will move on to the panel discussion. Before moving on to the panel discussion, I'd like to introduce the moderator of the session, Professor K. Sivakumar. He is currently working as a faculty in Pondicherry University, is a former scientist at Wildlife Institute of India, and is the co-PI of the Camper Dugong Recovery Project. He is an eminent marine scientist who has played a pivotal role in the initiation of the Dugong Recovery Project in India and is also a member of the Dugong Task Force in India. He is a member of various IUCN specialist groups ranging from marine to freshwater realm. He has written multiple action and management plans for conservation of biodiversity in India. His CV is almost 40 pages long, which we cannot introduce everything of it. This is just an overview of his immense contribution to wildlife conservation. Now, I would like to invite and hand over the session to Professor Sivakumar for the panel discussion. Welcome, sir.
Well, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, all. I hope all members are here in this panel now. Yeah. Okay, good. I thought you people left. It was actually a wonderful, very enlightening and enriching talk by all my four speakers, starting from Dr. Anand Pandey, who's once again completely given us a one nutshell talked about the technology that can be used in the marine megafauna conservation or marine fauna science, and then followed by Sagar talked about the drones, and then he mixed with artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques using the drone data, that information, and followed by Eric. We were waiting for his talk, and he could join, and also he shared his experience working in his region, especially with the manatee using a various technology, and then finally Isha. She has been working on the passive acoustic technology and using the marine mammals in India for a longer period. It was really enriching. Thank you very much for all of you for sharing your experiences. It was very useful for all the people who are listening to this program. Now, in a nutshell, what I could understand from you, four of you, that there are techniques it can be used to understand the population status and their distribution pattern. That is the techniques. There are various techniques you people are discussed for that, to understand the population status. Uh, Although molecular technique not used, but Anand touched upon that there is molecular tools can also be used to understand the population status. But whereas the Sagar talked about using a unmanned vehicle or underwater vehicle to estimate the population, as well as the passive acoustic technology, also the similar model which can estimate the population, of course, the distribution pattern as well as the density. And the same technique was already used by Eric. And apart from that, he also used some modeling using a other spatial data like thermosensors, those kind of information. And then the second aspect on the marine science is understanding the behavior of the animal. Again, there are various tools you people spoken. There are techniques available to understand the behavior of this marine mammal because they are very elusive and rare in the situation. And then one more thing, there are technology can use to detect the problem to this animal. And then, of course, one major technical issue which we didn't discuss so far, that there are technology advancement in conserving this species also. So, okay, we have technology there to understand the marine mammal or a terrestrial mammal. But somehow, in the marine mammal concern, only certain packet of the world where we could understand the marine mammals better than the majority of the world. What would be the reason? I start with the Eric. Although we have a technology, but still that data is not uniformly available, collected. Certain portion, there are many people work, whether it is because the technology so far available are highly complicated, or is it too expensive for many people cannot afford to use. Because I remember Chinmay was asking Isha about how to select it, because still for a Isha, it may be looking is a simple passive acoustic, but those who don't know the technology, they're really scared whether this technology might be very complicated, very difficult to use. That's one aspect. Second aspect is economic of those using this technology. How to solve this issue, Eric? In your region, whether people are very extensively used the technology, that was because the technology was very cheaper there, or the people could offer that much money to use those technology.
So, yeah, so I mean, it is a real concern that the cost can be prohibitive. I think when you're talking about what I've used is mainly small commercial quadcopters, you are talking about the range of several thousand like US dollars for a device and a system, and they do break and die like a cell phone or a camera, except when they die, it sometimes happens over the sea. So there's also a risk and high probability of losing equipment. I think the way that I've seen it implemented most effectively is often there's marine protected areas here, and their management teams are now being trained to use drones in various ways. And so I've worked with different groups in Belize and Mexico to help train local groups and government groups and NGOs as to how to use them at small scales in ways that are effective. You made various of the speakers made points about the scale of the distribution being challenging for study, and it's the same here. I mean, small drones don't take the place of aerial surveys for manatees. We still need other technology because we don't have yet the matching ability to fly drones at those scales. But I think starting small at finer scales with drones and acoustics makes a lot of sense. Sorry for that truck. Unlike whales and dolphins, manatees are fairly quiet. So you almost have to be really close to where they actually use the habitat, which is why I think, an approach of using drones and acoustics to better understand fine scale habitat use, for monitoring and conservation outcomes can be a more cost effective option. Even though you're talking about several $1,000s for a system, you're basically avoiding the need for boats and captains and a lot of other normal expenses that come with monitoring areas. I mean, you may need, a variety of tools to get there, but you can minimize a lot of the costs with drones. So I think it's one of the ways that I've seen, the people integrated into their toolbox. But granted, there is a huge gradient, and my colleagues in the United States have much larger, more expensive, and more capable drones. So it's still a limitation that we haven't fully overcome because we are more limited to simpler, more practical systems in places that where we can afford, much more costly operating systems.
Oh, thank you, Eric. It's really correct. Great. Isha, passive acoustic technology is one of the well established because we cannot go for aerial survey of conducting in a vast sea and all. But the passive acoustic technology could be a comparatively cheaper technology. You have been working in this, using this technique and monitoring the marine mammals. Uh, but still, this particular technique itself, though it is a very cheaper, comparatively easy to use it, but still it is not highly appreciated by Indian researcher. What might be the reason? Is it because still it is not accessible to the all the researcher, or the technology people are not simply not showing interest, or is there any other issues? Why in India we are still struggling to use this acoustic technology, and still people believe that feel that it is very highly complicated, very expensive kind of things. What would be your opinion?
Yeah, it's definitely expensive, and I think it's high risk also. If you lose it, it's a lot of data that's gone, like Eric said. Once it's gone, it's gone. But I think that's some of the risks that we take when we deploy something. So that definitely is a logistical and financial constraint. Also, finding places to deploy devices and not having them fished out or trawled out. That is a bit of a problem. But I think once you have these kind of things figured out, you have a framework to do acoustic monitoring, then it starts to get easier. Like we've been doing stuff along the coast for a while now, and it definitely gets easier once you have your questions in place of why I want to put the device here, and why I want to use this method, why I want to use this equipment. Definitely it gets better if you think about it in terms of the research questions. It's not a one solution for all. Like I found with my two species that we're studying, it definitely works better for one versus the other. So it's not always the golden key to answering questions. So it requires some background into what is happening. Otherwise, it's a lot of data that you collect and a lot of effort, but the returns may not be very high. So you definitely need some background. But it's getting easier, I think. There's a lot of tools available online to learn things nowadays. There's a lot of tutorials, everything is, and equipment is expensive, yes, but it's people are trying to make it low cost. At least the Cornell lab is trying to develop things, low cost recorders. We'll see how that goes. There's also the sound traps, which are relatively cheap for the kind of data that you can get from them. So yeah, it's getting there. It'll take some time. Also, I think, but one drawback in India is import costs are pretty high. It's not easy to get equipment from abroad, so that's a bit of a drawback. So I guess that's in a lot of other places as well. It's not
It's
that easy.
very good. Actually, in fact, we also experienced. Myself had a issue of importing one, and I think Dr. Anand was with me at that time. He was helping. We are trying to import a very small model hydrophone, and in fact, really we underwent a lot of hurdles from the government side because there are so much of procedure to follow to clear that 1.5 lakh rupees worth of equipment. I fully agree with that. I hope that government will very soon to no, make relax those rules at least for the scientific equipment, because hopefully the project Dolphin will take care of that. So when you move from the water to the aerial, which Sagar was taking the road, Sagar, we understood that manned aerial vehicle will be very difficult, very expensive when compared to the unmanned vehicle, because unmanned vehicles are cheaper. But still, unmanned vehicle also expensive when you considering the current legal measures which we have it in the country. because we cannot use such a cheaper drones, then it may not be useful for in the marine environment. When you go for a very expensive model, it's really expensive. Then again, you are telling that if you add this artificial intelligence tool and measuring tool along with the drone, probably the cost of those technique will be brought down. That is what overall cost you are telling. But there are many questions from the audience asking you that whether this AI tool which you are planning. In fact, I just want to clarify to all the audience, the AI tool for identification of marine mammals of India yet to be coming. Sagar is working on it, and once they come, because people mistook they thought that it's already available. So that's why they're asking the question whether it can identify new species. No, it can identify the species already referred. The other species it will identify as unknown species. So now tell us, Sagar, how long it will take to get a AI tools for Indian marine mammals?
Yeah. So as you rightly said, the tool that we have developed was only for the 6 species that I mentioned. So it will take time, as I mean, the time that would required to train a model that can detect a vast expanse of species would be like the first step towards it would be having a data set of all those species. Like we have more than 30 species of marine mammals. So if we want to train a model that can identify effectively, all the species that are there, we would require firstly a drone-based or an aerial imagery data set of all the species from our waters. Right now, all the species that we have detected, like the main aim when we started this study was to detect dugongs. While detecting dugongs, all the species that we saw that were in the same habitats, we trained a model to identify them. But if we get the footages of all the species, if aerial technology right now takes a boom and we have more people operating and collecting the database, then definitely in future we can see a model that can distinguish between all the species of at least the major marine megafauna that we have. And like the first step towards it would be having like a well established data set, and that would come once the technology is being accessible to all. With the current drone ban, right now it looks a little tricky because not many drones are allowed given the current rules and regulations that we have in our country. But very soon, once the data sets are there, or if we have certain data sets or which are freely available for making models or anything from other parts of the world, we can definitely look into distinguishing different megafauna on how they look aerially. So the model that we made was effective in detecting similar looking species, like a species like a mobulid ray and a eagle ray, which looks very similar to the human eye, even aerially. The model was able to distinguish between the two accurately. So with an availability of a major data set, I am pretty sure like in times to come, we can have an extensive model which can detect a wide range of marine megafauna, starting with whatever we have at least in Indian waters.
Oh, thank you. Now I move into Dr. Anand Pandey. Now you listen, Dr. Anand Pandey. Technologies are there, but unfortunately the technology is so complex. Need a considerable training for a people to use those technologies. Not that much user friendly. Second, the technology is expensive. And then Sagar was telling that need a lot of data. So that means expensive technology, complex technology, needed data means one cannot work. Many has to join and work. And in this situation, what is the way forward for India to strengthen its marine mammal conservation and marine mammal research in India?
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for that wonderful question. And first of all, I would like to congratulate Eric, Sagar, and Isha for a wonderful talk and really informative. I learned a lot of new things today. With respect to expensive technology, sir, I think one thing that we never focus on is something that the government also pushes is about Atmanirbhar India. So basically, India which is self-dependent, which is not dependent on imports to develop a new technology. So that is something that we should definitely think about and stress about. So that the technology becomes inexpensive, so it becomes accessible to people who cannot afford it right now, and also it has farther reach. So as I showed in my presentation, that we have identified important marine mammal areas. There are certain pockets of the country where lot of researchers are working, and I think the focus has been in those areas, especially around the urban centers, so especially around Mumbai, Chennai, Gulf of Mannar, Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Some areas have got a lot of focus from the last 25, 30, 40 years. But if you look at other parts of the country, specifically coasts of Gujarat, coasts of Odisha, coast of Andhra Pradesh, coast of West Bengal, very few people have worked over there. So I think with technology becoming inexpensive, it's also an effort that has to be made from the engineers in the country to develop in-house technology, indigenous technology, which is very important. And we so that we reduce our dependence on external imports. Imports have become also very difficult, also very expensive to get. It's also taxed. So when the taxes have become higher, so the cost of the equipment becomes almost double. So the best way forward, sir, is to there is this is one thing that the technology has to become inexpensive. The second thing is lack of capacity. Isha mentioned that there is a bioacoustic course which is happening. Great initiative, and I think we should have similar workshops and training programs for people who want to attend, who want to learn these new technologies. Specifically, drone. It's very easy to operate a drone, but where do you operate a drone? How do you operate a drone to estimate a population? How do you operate a drone to understand the habitat, to map a habitat? And what are the different kinds of can you do distance sampling using drones? So all those type of training programs need to be there for researchers, for early career researchers, for students, graduate students maybe, and obviously the first cut would be for people who are already working on marine mammals. And in that respect, I would say that we have in the last year we have started this new network of people, which is called as the Marine Mammal Consortium of India. And we had an in-person workshop last year. A lot of people, I think, all of us were present in that workshop. Isha was not there; Isha was online. But it was a really good initiative, and we are trying to kind of ramp it up so that we have active collaborations and active networking amongst marine mammal researchers in the country. It's very important. Isha has also started another student chapter of marine mammals with Society of Marine Mammalogy, which is also something very important, and it can be used to organize these kind of training programs, organize these kind of capacity development programs, specifically for researchers who are working on marine mammals. So I think that is the way forward, and we should try to club together our resources. WA has been working on dugongs for a really long time. Project Dolphin is coming up. There are other small research projects going on with other marine mammal researchers in the country. I think it's now high time to collaborate, and I think let go of our egos and territoriality within the field so that we can collaborate and not fight about small little issues, and look forward for basically how can we improve our data, how can we improve our data, how can we improve our science, how can we protect and conserve whatever is remaining of the marine mammals in the country.
Okay, thank you, Anand. In fact, we are running shortage of time. In fact, I'm also going to end with the same positive note that probably networking and collaboration, that is the best approach available with us. We can strengthen the research. You know very well that the Dugong project that Ministry of Environment started, that is a turning point in the marine mammal research in India. So it really given us a lot of information and experience what should be done, what should not be done, and all those things we got came from this 7 years of program, and end result was excellent. In fact, a lot of dugongs were rehabilitated, and dugong's numbers seems to be increased because their sightings increased in all three regions. That is a very good news, and the project Dolphin is the big hope for all of us. And of course, as you mentioned, that networking and collaboration, the initiative have already taken. Now the WCS is coordinating that particular program, as in the name of Marine Mammal Consortium. We have about 40 to 50 young researchers working in the country. That itself is a great news for India. And with this note, technology is very important, that we cannot throw it. But right now it seems to be a little bit expensive. But if the government come up with a certain policy relaxation, especially import duty, and importing that equipment is easier. All those things probably encourage the Indian researchers to do a better job, and ultimately it is useful for conserving our wonderful marine world. With this note, I once again thank you all four of you. You really given a wonderful talk, and also you accepted the invitation from the Wildlife Institute of India and given this talk. Thank you very much. Once again, happy Dugong Day, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Now over to Ashni.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. So, Eric is having a little bit of technical difficulties, so he wasn't available. So, thank you so much for the panel discussion. So, with this, we come to the end of our webinar today. And I would like to thank everyone for joining us. And over to Dr. Nehru Prabhakaran, scientist at Wildlife Institute of India, to deliver the vote of thanks. So, your audio is not. Mhm. So, the audio is very low. Hello, sir. Yeah, the audio is very low. Can you just try one more time? We cannot hear you. We can hear you in bits and pieces, sir. Yes, a little better. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So, with this, we would once again thank everyone for joining us on this World Dugong Day, and we will be ending the session now. Thank you very much for everybody joining us.